Hello, yes, it's me again, and today I want to talk about Tarzan the Broadway musical. Yes, it's a real thing. I was surprised too. No, it didn't do that well, and I can kind of guess why. It doesn't have the standard type of story of a musical, and the songs are very largely forgettable, save for the original ones from the movie. And I think maybe people were getting tired of the Disney Renaissance formula since this was the end of that, even farther than the end of it, because it opened, I think, in like 2006. But I still want to preface this with the fact that I can't appreciate that, much like The Little Mermaid, this show requires a lot of creativity, especially in the technical aspects, because it has to portray things like jungle vines and gorillas. And while I can't find a ton of official footage, probably because it only lasted from May of 2006 to July of 2007, which is only like 486 performances. But there was this really cool footage in the trailer, which was posted 10 years ago. Jeez, feel really old. They had Tarzan's parents flying on wires through a bunch of fog to portray that they were falling through the water. And then they also had them hanging from these wires, like, vertically, on the backdrop of a sandy beach, so it simulated like a bird's eye view. And that was super cool. Like, that's really great. But I still think a lot of the songs are really weak, especially lyrically. And that, coupled with the fact that it was when people were probably getting tired of the Disney formula, is probably why it closed fairly early. And it's a shame, because I think Phil Collins has some really cool songs, especially in the original movie. But he wrote all these, and I don't love them. Let's just dive into them. Okay, the first one, like in the movie, is Two Worlds. And here's the thing. I'm gonna go on a little spiel. What I think a lot of people don't like about Tarzan, the original movie, is that instead of characters directly singing their feelings and thoughts to the audience, a narrator does the singing. Phil Collins is just singing above their heads, kind of. And so the complaint tends to be, like, we're getting the point of view of the character, so why not just hear it directly from them? But I actually always really liked the whole narrator singing things, singing directly to us. I enjoy a good narration for like a framing device, if it's taken full advantage of, if there's purpose for it. And yes, using the third person puts a little bit of distance between the audience and the character, but it can give us information that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise. For example, in this song, the narrator, Phil Collins, draws direct parallels between the gorillas and the humans by singing things like "Danger's no stranger here," which alludes to both, what's his face, the leopard, I think he's the leopard Zapur, killing Tarzan's parents as well as killing Colin Kerchak's baby. The narrator also makes things sound more poetic and compelling than they might come from ordinary people. Like, a dream is gone, but where there's hope just doesn't sound as cool coming from the person who's experiencing it. Sorry. That's just a weird thing to say about your own hope. And whether you like it or not, it also kind of makes stating the theme a lot easier. Like, he sings, "Trust your heart, let fate decide, to guide these lives we see." So he is able to point directly to the moral for us, because he's an objective outside eye who can see that kind of thing. And the audience needs this outside eye when it comes to Tarzan and the gorillas somewhat, because newsflash, they're not super eloquent with English, so they kind of need someone to voice their thoughts. And it wouldn't make sense if, voice thoughts of some but not others. So, but in the Broadway musical, because it's a musical officially, Tarzan is singing this song, sort of just as a offstage voice, I believe, at least in the version I saw. And with him singing it, I mean, we lose the element that makes this different from a lot of musicals, and some of it just kind of sounds unnatural coming from Tarzan. I don't know if that's just me. Like, a paradise untouched by man within this world blessed with love. It just sounds kind of stilted, especially coming from him, who doesn't have that sort of personality. I just personally think if Tarzan is the one narrating this whole story, at least this part of it, he should have been established as a framing device beforehand. Like, is he singing to his future kid? Is he just trying to sort through what happened to his parents in his head? Is he talking with Jane about it? Like, maybe then him singing Trust Your Heart, Let Fate Decide wouldn't sound as much like a character in an after-school special, breaking the fourth wall to directly state the moral to the audience. You know, maybe then it would come off more as what he's learned from everything. And really, if I were to have done it, which obviously isn't going to happen, but I don't care, I'm going to say it anyway. If I were to have done it, I think it was a song written for an outside character, and they should have established a new character as narrator. Like maybe an ancestor or child of Tarzan and Jane, who can be our framing device, set it up, and sort of give us a Burr narrating Hamilton vibe. Overall, I just think it's an odd choice, but it's definitely not the worst decision made in this show. Okay, You'll Be in My Heart, which comes right after, like in the movie. It will always be a beautiful song. It always has been a beautiful song, and it makes sense for Kala to sing this directly all the way through. I'm fine with that. Then comes Who Better Than Me, which is basically Turk deciding to help Tarzan out become a better ape. My first question is, why is Turk a boy? And this isn't just like a single show thing. Every version that I've seen online of this has Turk being a boy. This is just a conscious decision that they made. And normally, I would say that if a gender of a character isn't relevant to the plot, I see no problem with it being changed. But the fact of the matter is, this is musical theater. And in musical theater, the roles of men always, always, always vastly outnumber the roles of women. So I'm actually a little irritated by this change. Like, why? Nevertheless, Turk is the most fun character here because all the others get kind of watered down by bland lyrics. And it's one of the catchier numbers. I like it. Next is No Other Way, which is Kerchak rationalizing sending Tarzan out alone in the wild to abandon him because he's a human and eventually he's going to become savage. He's really likable. And the beginning of this song is really, really weak to me. Like, there doesn't seem to be any hook or intelligible rhyme scheme, but I'll admit it gets better near the end, and it's nice to hear Kerchak's point of view, even though throwing a kid out to fend for himself is a kind of a heck of a lot colder than what movie Kerchak did, which was kind of just not want to acknowledge a human as his son. Next is I Need to Know, which is sort of like the Castle on the Cloud song of the show. It's just Tarzan being sad that he's an outcast. I think it's good that we get a song from young Tarzan, but this one's just real generic. Like, I can't remember anything else about it. Son of Man, as always, is a bop. We stan. The end. Then it's Sure As Sun Turns to Moon, which is Kala and Kerchak's song, where she says she loves him, but he can be a real dingus sometimes. That's how I'd summarize it. It's a really sweet title, actually. I kind of wish he played with this metaphor of the sun and moon a little more. Maybe compared the two of them somehow. I don't know. Give me something. And I like the beginning where they kind of have a back and forth over whether or not Kerchak plays with the children usually. It's funny, but overall the song's still a little forgettable. Oh boy. Okay, Waiting for This Moment, which is Jane's introductory song. Instead of getting abducted by baboons in the show, Jane is so entranced with the plant life she's finding and has studied for so long that she gets stuck in a giant spider web and has to be rescued, which makes this Jane a heck of a lot dumber than the animated one to me. Like, she literally just doesn't realize she's in a web until she's in a web. As opposed to movie Jane, who was a damsel in distress, but she was funny while she was doing it. And it wasn't that she was stupid, she was just kind of out of her element. She was using, posh British manners with a wild animal. And I like that in the song, she starts singing the Latin names of the plants, but it still has no, build or tension. Like, it's kind of just there. It just lays there. Like a dead frog. Like, she's singing about how she's always wanted to experience what she's experiencing. Literally, I swear that's how it's set up. Like, she's not very specific about what it is she's enjoying. Like, I want more specifics. I don't know. So I think this is where the problem of the weak lyricism starts. I like that he's the one who wrote the music, but I think he would have benefited from having some help from someone who's more experienced in writing, story stuff and plot stuff, specifically in musicals. Like, one thing we know about Jane is that she's the talker in her relationship with Tarzan. She rambles when she's nervous. She knows English well, obviously, so we should see language emphasized in her songs, but it just kind of blends in with all the other added numbers, both sonically and lyrically. Also, I'm sorry, let me just real quick get me on my costume high horse. Not that I know anything about historical costuming. I'm pretty sure Jane should not be wearing a hoop skirt in this scene, because that's about 70 years earlier. From the movie's costume, you guess it's around turn of the century, because she has, a bustle. So I don't know why professional costumers changed this. Tangent over. Also, don't get why Jane needed to lose her skirt to get stuck in a spider web, but it's a thing that happens. Like, she's in her bloomers. What is it with period fiction that always has to give the female character more physical freedom by putting her in her underwear? Yes, I know that they're just pants to us as modern day audience, but Clayton and her father would be hecka weirded out by a woman coming to camp in her bloomers. I think, right? If she needs to move around more, just put her in a simpler skirt, or put her in some exploring trousers from the very beginning. Anywho, on to different, which is Tarzan and Jane's Jane Tarzan song. Which is Tarzan and Jane's meeting and handing song. Hand squishing. Hand pressing? I don't know. You know what I mean. I like that there's a song for Tarzan and Jane's first meeting, and it's also good for the theme of comparing and contrasting gorillas and humans, but it's real generic again. We are on to Act 2. That's right. Our main couple has only just met by the end of Act 2, where you're starting to see a problem with pacing. Trash in the Camp is next. We also stan. It's great. It's jazzy. And again, it's something a little different for a musical, especially a Disney one. Also, why does Clayton have a southern accent in the show? Are we trying to say something about southern people? Next song is Like No Man I've Ever Seen, which is... what was it? Oh, it was Jane, basically, and her father having a sung conversation about Tarzan. He's sort of being like, while she's like, And this title strikes me as weird because I thought we just covered 2 songs ago that he was different from anyone she's ever seen. Like, I like that we get some of Jane's point of view versus her father, who can clearly see she's in love, but it's just covering the same ground. Next is Strangers Like Me, and I don't know what you want me to say. All the originals are amazing. For the First Time, which is Tarzan and Jane's underwhelming love ballad. And it seems to hold a mighty strong resemblance to every other musical exchange between them. Not intentionally. Like, one of Jane's first lines is literally, "The affection I feel is hard to understand." Which sums up the problems with these lyrics. Like, we get it. You are feeling the feelings you've never felt before, and they're hard to describe, but the point of the song is to describe them. So could you try? He can write well, I know he can. I don't know what this is. They also sing uniquely like no other at one point. It's just pure poetry. And here I want to talk about the fact that the musical tries to excuse the lack of narrator by having Tarzan sing his thoughts, which are clearly just his thoughts because he doesn't have the language dexterity to do this diegetically. On top of that, Jane is obviously a cultured, educated, talkative lady, as I said before. So these lyrics should be super eloquent. They should say something about love that hasn't been said a million times before. But I don't know what they're even saying about love. Then it's the Who Better Than Me reprise, which is Turk trying to convince Tarzan he's not in love with Jane, but finally agreeing to help distract Kerchak. Which, it's good. No complaints here, really. Then You'll Be in My Heart reprise, which Colin and Tarzan sing, and it's still beautiful. It's great. They bring the just look over your shoulder little bridge into this song, and it really gets me. It's really sweet. And then Sure As Sun Turns to Moon reprise, which is what Kala sings to Kerchak as he dies, and I also have no complaints about it. I just have tears. Everything That I Am, which is when Kala shows Tarzan his parents' treehouse, which is arguably the most important part of his character arc. But the problem is, the song starts with questions and doesn't stop asking them. Lyrics include, will someone tell me where I belong? Where I should go? Can someone tell me where I am going wrong? Will they make me see more? Is this my family? Can it really be them that I see? It's like Phil Collins is literally being like, what is the theme? What is the tone? What does his parents dying mean to him? And I'm like, that's not my job, that's your job, Phil.
Come on, Dora! You're the one with the map! Don't ask me!
Tarzan then sings all these emotions I can barely control, and I stab myself in the face. After this song, what's strange is that in the show, Clayton is taken care of absurdly easily. Like, all it takes is Tarzan grabbing a hold of his gun and pointing it at him. None of Clayton's allies help him. It's clear that Tarzan isn't going to shoot him because this is basically his climax in the show. Him deciding, I'm not going to be a man like you, I'm not going to murder you. No one else has a gun. Does Clayton give up? Yes, immediately. Doesn't make sense. This is your chance to grab it from him or something. I understand they couldn't do like a big set piece of them going to the ship and then Tarzan going back to help his family with a bunch of other animals, but I don't know. It's just, this is such a small climax. There's not much meat to it. Maybe it could be saved if you gave Clayton some real depth, if this is a real force of wills. Like, you have the time for it. Make him a real foil for Tarzan, someone who uses brute strength, holds contempt for, like, intelligence and education for some sort of compelling reason. That way, when Tarzan says, I don't want to be a man like you, it's him rejecting the brutality found in both the human and the jungle world. Like, evil can be in both places, two worlds, but they're the same, And no, Broadway writers, I'm here to tell you that having the hots for the female lead does not give a villain depth. Looking at you two stage versions of Anastasia and the Lion King. Also, I feel like we don't see Kerchak for a while. Before he dies, he's shot by Clayton, similar to the original. The theme of the story, which is that bad things and good things can come up from the jungle as well as the human world. Love and death and family can come from either because they're not actually different. And that's understood by Kerchak by the end when he finally sees Tarzan as like an honorary gorilla, as his son. But the moment Kerchak's mind changes, which in the movie is when Tarzan comes back to save the gorillas, and in the musical when he doesn't shoot Clayton, goes by so fast, it's just hard to understand that. And when Clayton, who is kind of like Kerchak, just in the human world, because they're both kind of brutal, they're both suspicious of the other because of brutality. When Clayton doesn't understand the theme and doesn't change and only faces the consequences of like offstage jail time, it's just not reinforced as strongly. Whatever. Why do I even... It's fine. It's fine. It's a fine show. Because then we have Two Worlds finale, which is still a great song. I don't think Tarzan should be singing it, but, this wasn't as bad as Aladdin. I'm just kind of meh about it. But still, don't stretch an hour and 30-minute movie, I think, and do a 2 hour and 20-minute show without changing more of your plot, because it's gonna drag. That was my review of Tarzan, if anybody ever cared to hear about it.